so disturbed by the growing sort of ideas based on closure, right? Based on sort of a so-called Italian identity, and preserving a so-called Italian identity, which is false, of course. I mean, the Italian identity that those politicians were trying to protect is a false identity. It's a false Italian identity. And I think if you are Italian, or if you know Italy and know Italians and have your eyes open and most importantly read its literature and understand its culture, you realize it is now. And so that was very comforting to me, actually, to realize that, okay, maybe I'm reading this article in the newspaper today that's very upsetting, or maybe I'm seeing this situation on the street, which makes me feel less welcome here. But at the same time, I am reading these authors who are showing me that there is another Italy. There has always been another Italy. And so that was very important to me when I was living there, and remains very, very meaningful to me, and makes me feel that I have a place there, that I too have a place there, right? Because that's something that I've struggled with my whole life, even in the United States. The question of, do I belong here? Do I have a place? And wherever I go, I ask myself this, because it does remain a question. I've never been in a place where I've felt completely accepted, right? So I have to accept that lack of acceptance. I have to accept it, and then I have to work against it as best as I can. In terms of English literature, right, and what you call, we can say on the whole, in the Anglosphere. But having said that, that's not true anyway, because honestly, when I think back now to what put me on this Italian path, right? And I do trace it back to my reading of certain, great writers in English who, in fact, were moving out of their language. So, James Joyce, okay, Samuel Beckett, Nabokov. I mean, these were writers I discovered as a college student. And especially if you think of the example of Joyce, someone who moves to very intense relationship with the Italian language, and befriends Italo Svevo and has an Italian life. These were the authors I discovered when I was 18 years old as a college student, and I think they were the writers who I think first planted the seed, whether consciously or not, in terms of the idea of moving into another language, or about life, right? And that's what I saw in the examples of people like Joyce, like Beckett. We know the journey of Nabokov is, it's Russia eventually into the United States. So there's so many factors, and it's less common, shall we say, for the writer to choose the other language, right? But many have before me. Certainly Beckett chose to write in French. That was his choice, right? And he talks about why he. But I think that this idea has we can also see it in English literature. Of course, we see it in English literature, and we see all of the exciting borrowings. I mean, this is why I loved reading, and this is why I wrote my dissertation on Renaissance literature, English Renaissance literature, because we see so much borrowing in that period in English from Shakespeare and his contemporaries, and they're borrowing often from Italian, as we know. So these are things that writers are always, I think they have always been doing this, right?
Yeah.
And this is what my reading of classics of the Greco-Roman tradition also taught me, that the Latin poets were always borrowing from the Greek. So there's this, and I think translation here is the centerpiece, right? It's the action, it's the operation, it's the activity of translation. Throughout the centuries that the translators are insisting upon the importance, the necessity of nourishing the so-called native language with other languages, you know. And that is why translation is also such a political statement in and of itself.